Today's podcast is not brought to you by anybody at all because we are not airing our own podcast this week. So you get no advertisers this week, but that's okay because you're going to enjoy it anyway, won't you?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Jumbled, your favorite podcast about nothing. I'm Johnny, and we are without Zach. But don't worry, you're not going to have to listen to me ramble on for about 59 minutes. We are going to showcase a really exciting podcast created by my personal friend and a great friend of the show, Greg. Greg took his experience that he got being on Jumbled and said, you know what? Fuck those guys. I can do it better. And teamed up with our friend Anthony and created the great podcast Nack Nerd. Nack Nerd is a podcast that's going to explore new technologies, hobbies, do-it-yourself projects, and questions about life and science. And we're going to play their first episode, which will give you a bit of an understanding of who Greg and Anthony are as podcasters and as people. It's a pretty great episode. Definitely made me chuckle. I personally recommend episode 2, where they dive down into the nitty-gritties of building a computer and, honestly, answering questions about what do all of those parts do? Do I really need them? How do they all work together? So we're going to play episode 1. Give it a listen. Make sure you follow them on all social media platforms. They do have a pretty killer website, knickknacknerd.com. Here we go. Podcasting is my not profession. And you can also find them on iTunes and I believe Stitcher and Spotify. I could be wrong, but hey, if not, I'm making promises on their behalf and there ain't nothing they can do about it. But please go give them a listen. Let them know to keep going. It's a great podcast. And you know what? Who knows? Down the line, maybe we'll have a Jumbled Nack Nerd collaboration. Here we go.
Hey everyone, welcome to Nack Nerd. I'm Greg Burlett and I'm here with my friend Anthony Keelan. And today we are talking about robots. About robots. So we were both in Disneyland last week. Was it last week already?
Last week, yeah.
Time flies by now that I'm getting older. And it was, so we saw the new Star Wars exhibit. What was it called? Galaxy's Edge?
Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland.
Mm-hmm. And was by far one of the coolest things I've seen at Disney. There's a lot of stuff at Disney that is, I guess, not my cup of tea. Would you say?
I would say that, yeah.
Kelly took me on. Kelly's my wife. Kelly took me on. What is that Toad?
Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It wasn't that wild, and it was kind of boring.
But the Star Wars was not anything like that.
It was not at all. It completely blew my mind. Was it supposed to be on Endor?
No, it's on a planet called Batuu. Batuu, in the Outer Rim.
The Outer Rim.
The Outer Rim.
As opposed to the Inner Rim.
I think that goes without saying.
Yeah. So, okay, was it supposed to be an Imperial fortress or outpost on that planet, and then the rebels were there, or
it's
something?
It's kind of like
that?
a scruffy, like Tatooine-ish kind of place.
It was Tatooine's like a sand planet. Oh, ish. Okay.
Like, you know, there's like a bunch of markets and people just go there, and there's lots of smugglers and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I did notice that they had that little animal that's on Jabba's shoulder.
Yeah, Salacious Crumb.
What?
Salacious Crumb, Greg.
How do you know
the
this?
Kowakian monkey lizard?
That's incredible. How do you know that?
How do you not?
I don't know. I guess I've never read. Is that like... They don't say that in the movies at all.
They do not, no.
No, they don't say that at all. Just seeing the Millennium Falcon life-size, seeing an X-Wing life-size.
Oh, the Millennium Falcon, incredible.
It was absolutely incredible. It was really, really cool. to see all that. I didn't get to go on the main ride, which I'm still a little salty about.
Well, it just opened that weekend, right?
It had just opened that weekend. Yeah, I guess some backstory. We're Canadians, just a couple of Canucks, and we just serendipitously were down in LA at the same time, checking out Disney, which was pretty cool.
Completely unplanned.
Completely unplanned. We just happened to be there at the same time. So that was very cool. Talking about robots, though, there's a couple rides at Disney that I absolutely loved when I was a kid. Splash Mountain was one of them, and it has tons of animatronics on it.
You know what? The animatronics, they don't hold up, but I still love that ride.
Yeah, it's got this really, well, I guess for me, it's got this old school, nostalgic kind of vibe to it, which I really adore. But it's actually really creepy.
It's super creepy. I remember one time we were on it a couple years ago. My wife and I are pretty big Disney fans, so we get down there pretty often.
That's an understatement.
So we were actually on there, and the ride broke down, and man, was it way creepier when they weren't moving.
So you got stuck on there?
We got stuck on there.
Oh, damn. That's yeah. So parts of that ride near the end, you get into this. So first of all, it's creepy, because there's that, like, right at the end, that rabbit that is being tied up and like spit roasted is the wrong word.
He's not spit roasted.
He's tied up like over a fire or something, and he's screaming for his life, which is really creepy. You know what would make it more creepy?
I have no idea.
If it was all Uncanny Valley, like if they up the animatronics to a point where
they were just not quite good enough.
But right at that point where they're not quite good enough. I guess if people haven't heard what Uncanny Valley is, do you want to explain that?
Sure. I guess like Uncanny Valley is where things they look photo real, I guess, but when something just looks a little bit off and you can't quite tell what it is, but you know it's not right.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. And it's not only that it's not right, it makes you feel really uneasy.
Yeah, it's unsettling.
It's very unsettling. So think about like a robot that acts really realistically, makes intelligent decisions. So think of like iRobot, like that Will Smith movie.
Yeah.
And those robots don't really have that Uncanny Valley effect, even though they're so intelligent and cognizant and have a conscience and stuff like that, because they're not skinned.
They're not skinned. They don't really look like people, aside from the fact that they walk on two legs and have two arms.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they
just see-through
speak
robots.
English and stuff like that. But they don't give me an Uncanny Valley
not
effect.
all robots have to speak English.
That's true. C-3PO speaks how many languages? This is your trivia.
6-point-some billion.
There's that many languages in the galaxy?
I suppose.
That's great. Why? C-3PO would know. Also in the last movie, C-3PO had sass, man.
He killed it.
He had sass. And usually it's R2 that has the sass. So I really enjoyed that. So do you know the name of that robot? It's a female robot, and it's skinned. I can't remember her name, and they brought her on a talk show, and she said, "I'm going to kill everyone." In the middle of the talk show. It's like a famous research robot.
Yeah, it's not ringing any bells here.
Oh, okay. That just came to my mind talking about Uncanny Valley, but it became even more uncanny because she talked about killing everyone on Earth. So I guess people's sentiments towards robots looking exactly like us is very much like a Battlestar Galactica effect.
Oh yeah,
and we're both very much Battlestar Galactica fans.
I love it.
You want to give people like a rundown of the plot? Because I'm sure that not everyone knows what Battlestar Galactica is.
Probably
They
not.
just know it's nerdy.
I guess, in summary, Battlestar Galactica is about these, like, people. They're not from Earth, but they're still humans, and there was a war against their robot slaves, and that was a long time ago. And then the robot slaves come back, and now they look like human. They're made of flesh, and no one can tell if the robot slaves are called Cylons, and no one can tell if they're humans or not. And it's basically a show about deception and sci-fi.
Yeah, and like the tragedy of the human race, kind of, right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, like they talk about
The futility.
The futility. That's I wasn't looking for the word tragedy. I was looking for futility. That's totally true. And I guess so. Yeah, they have Cylons that used to look like bucket heads, like they were all just regular,
like Tin Man robots.
Tin Man robots, like exactly what
like
you would
old
think.
BBC robots made from garbage cans.
Yes, totally. With giant guns for hands.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly like that. And then they evolved to look exactly like humans, and they were indistinguishable. So there's this character in the show that's a squirrely little man.
The best character in the show, in my mind.
Kelly hated. Actually, Kelly hated. Kara. No, yeah, it was Kara Thrace. She really didn't like.
My
Kara
wife
Thrace.
also hates Kara Thrace. I
She
don't know
didn't
why.
like Kara either. So Gaius Baltar is like a scientist.
Perhaps the best scientist.
Perhaps the best scientist, but he often puts on. Would you say he puts on a black hat, like a white hat, black hat? Like he wears both, I think.
I would say he is self-serving.
He's extremely self-serving.
That's pretty much all he cares about is himself.
Yeah. So I guess that
He
would
wears
be,
whatever hat is
serves
convenient
him
at the
at
time.
that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the show, there's no way to distinguish between Cylons and humans, and Cylons are in fact like walking around the ship on the battle stars, and no one is able to differentiate between them, and their trusted crew are in fact robots, right? So Gaius says that he's developed a test to figure out who's a Cylon and who's a human, and he didn't actually have any such test. Right?
He had no clue.
Yeah, he had no idea. He was just kind of rattling test tubes and making people think that he was doing things. But I don't think he actually ever had a solution. But then going back to humans and us, differentiating between robots, we have a guy in our history called Alan Turing, fantastic computing scientist. Actually, it wasn't recently. When did they make that movie about him?
Probably 4 or 5 years ago now. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah. Was it called just Turing? What
No,
was the name
it
of
was called... Man, I don't know what it was called.
All right, let's take a short break and look up the name of that movie, and we'll be right back. Amazon is a website that will ship you anything you need in life. Literally anything. You can even buy uranium ore and start your own nuclear reactor today. Sign up for an Amazon Prime subscription and get 2-day free shipping, access to Prime Video and music streaming services, and 20% off diapers delivered right to your door. You don't even need to take off your pajamas. Sign up for Prime using the link bit.ly/Amazon Knick-Knack Nerd, which also supports this podcast. And now, back to the show.
The movie Imitation Game.
Imitation Game. Thank you. So it kind of recounts his adventures at Bletchley Park, cracking Enigma, which was a famous World War II, I think Polish cipher.
German.
Was it
It was
German?
the German code machine.
It was a German code machine, and the one that they got their hands on, I think, was Polish, because they had a physical Enigma machine at Bletchley Park.
Yes, they somehow obtained the physical machine, and they were able to run tests against it.
Yeah. So he had this, massive computer that was basically doing brute force, basically like cracking ciphertext.
And the computer, it was like a big mechanical beast.
Yeah, with a whole bunch of spinny things in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, background, I am a computing scientist.
I am not.
So, Anto's an engineer, and I'm a computing scientist and a data scientist. So it really pains me at the heart of my being to say spinny thing when I'm talking about a computer.
Well, that just shows how uneducated you are.
Exactly. So the reason we're talking about Alan Turing is back in the day, he created a test to differentiate between a human and a robot. And he did not call it the Turing test. Actually, the paper name, I looked up the paper name because I thought it was called either the Imitation Game or Alan Turing's a Bomb or something like that. But it's in fact like some ridiculously long, very boring scientific title that's published in a journal article.
As academics like to do.
As academics like to do, right?
Anyone that's read a paper knows that the titles are atrociously long.
Yeah. So kind of a missed opportunity that, you know, he didn't foresee this movie being made about him and name it The Imitation Game because it's very cool. And in that paper, so we had to read that paper when I was doing my undergraduate degree. And in that paper, he has a lot of really cool ideas about basically artificial intelligence, how to properly train machines to react to the environment like humans do. He kind of described machines and robots as treating them like a child. And if they make mistakes, tell them, hey, you made a mistake, and why did you make that mistake so that he can correct it.
Yeah. It's incredible he was thinking about all of that stuff at basically like the infancy of computing.
It blows my mind. Actually, just in general in computing science, it blows my mind that there were people doing neural networks in the 60s. So right now, neural networks are, you know, everyone's like deep learning is
the rage.
It's the rage. Everything is deep neural networks, recurrent neural networks, everything like that. And they've been around since the 60s. I think last name is Rosenblatt, I believe. We're gonna do some fact checking after that. If we make
that
mistakes,
stuff will be in the show notes.
That's right, in the show notes. You can email us at hello@knickknacknerd.com and tell us, all the points that we messed up.
And how wrong we are.
And how wrong we are. I think it was Rosenblatt, and I think it was 1966. But I can't recall exactly. So he was playing around with single neural networks back in the 60s. And then it kind of fell out of style. Like, we didn't have the computing power to actually train artificial intelligence systems. We didn't have the size and the breadth of networks. We didn't have, we were still using punch cards back in like the 70s and stuff like that.
Yeah, like
right?
the computers to do what your phone could do now would take up multiple rooms.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like some of the IBM research computers back in the day. There was a picture on Reddit that I saw of them wheeling a single module, like a part of it, out of a giant truck into IBM's facilities. It's pretty nuts to think about, and our phone would blow that out of the water.
If you've seen the movie Hidden Figures,
I actually haven't seen that.
So part of that movie is them, bringing in computers to start, taking over, working out those calculations. And one of the main characters in the movie takes it upon herself to learn how to program the computers. And you can just see the enormity of the machines and how complex they were to learn. There was like a book probably as thick as like from the floor to the top of your desk.
And was it still punch cards back then?
Oh, definitely.
Definitely, yeah. I remember, I think it was my uncle, or it was either my uncle or a prof at U of A, I can't quite remember, was telling us about assignments that they would have to write when they were doing schooling, and they would have to program their punch cards and then physically walk over to a separate building that contained a giant computer in it, feed the punch cards, get the output, and then hand it in to be graded. And the person that was telling me this story said, and don't drop your punch cards, because if you get them out of order, you're screwed. Which was just crazy. I couldn't believe that. And just like when we were growing up, we didn't have any sort of like personal computers, nothing like that. And it's just crazy how many things have changed just in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I think we kind of got in at the very start of when things really started to get good with computers.
Yeah, that's actually really exciting. It's very exciting. Like we spent many of days like doing LAN parties in Diablo. Was original Diablo? Or
Diablo 2 was probably the favorite.
Yeah, that was probably the favorite. And I remember just setting up like a LAN and playing between two computers was mind blowing. It's like, this is the future. This is crazy. And now it's like nothing.
Yeah, everyone does it.
Yeah.
Super easy to set up now.
Yeah. And I remember even playing with like Warcraft 3 came out a really long time ago. And now Warcraft 3 Reforged is coming out, which is pretty exciting. But I remember just the ability to be able to host a custom game.
Yeah.
You had to go into your router and you had to open up UDP ports and I think even TCP ports, stuff like that.
Yeah, you had to expose both the UDP and TCP ports to be even able to connect to other players.
Yeah. And now everything is so seamless.
So plug and play.
It's so, yeah, you just, like, we take so many things for granted right now that we can play online games and be on Discord and be on all these different services at the same time. Except for our friend Matt, who lives out in the rural areas and has crap internet. Poor guy. Anyways, we're talking about Alan Turing and the robots. So his way of thinking about training was treat the robot like an infant, let it make mistakes, and when it does make mistakes, tell it what it should do better, and when it does the right thing, give it a reward. So it's almost like reinforcement learning. Like, it very much mimics how humans
or dogs
or dog, how basically any mammal reacts to stimuli in our world. Like, we make decisions, which is called a policy. Like, we look at all of the arms. They're called bandit arms in machine learning, reinforcement learning. We look at all the different arms in our environment that we can pull, and we look at the rewards from them, and then we get our reward, and we say, could we have done better? Could we have done worse? And that really mimics when we get a reward as humans. It's a dopamine hit in our brain. We just get a surge of dopamine, and we're like, hell yeah, I want to do that again. Which is probably why cocaine and what are the other drugs that just flood your brain with dopamine?
Any opiate, really.
Yeah, I think anything like that. That's why people get so addicted to hard drugs like that, is because it just blows your brain with dopamine, which is our reward center in our brain. So of course, as humans, we're like, yeah, let's do that again.
Yeah, more rewards, please.
Give me more rewards, and more frequent rewards. So that was a really innovative way of thinking about how to train machines and robots to be more like humans. Give them feedback and give them dopamine, digital dopamine, right? And then he continued on in that same paper, and then started talking about what we now call the Turing test. So the Turing test is when you have, let's say that you and a machine or a person.
What's the purpose of the Turing test?
That's a good point.
So I guess the purpose of the Turing test is to tell whether the computer can, be mistaken for a human, I guess, in the most general of terms.
Yeah. So I guess like the Gaius-Baltar Cylon test.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah. That's exactly it. So imagine that you're separated from another entity. So at that time, you don't know if it's a computer or a robot or a person, and you're separated by a screen. You can't see them, and you ask a whole bunch of questions, and they return with responses. And it's your job to figure out if the entity is human or not, right? So a lot of people kind of equate this problem to a chatbot, right? Like, if I'm engaging with a chatbot, if I go online and I Google search chatbot, right? I'm going to have, a plethora of different chatbots that I can interact with. They all suck. They're not really that great.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of similar to the Blade Runner Void Kampf test, where they're just asking the guy questions and he's supposed to respond, and then they use the answers to those questions to determine whether he's a replicant, which is like the same as a Cylon or a robot.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. Yeah, so I guess like the Turing test is kind of permeated across a lot of different sci-fi and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, very popular in sci-fi.
But in the Imitation Game, did they even go into the Turing test at all? I don't think so.
No, it more was around like the kind of the war and breaking the code and the excitement around that, and his breakthroughs with the building the computer and his frustrations and failures and stuff like that.
Yeah. So kind of an icon in the computing science, in the history of computing science, and people that really contributed to, I guess, cryptography, artificial intelligence, among many, many other things. I haven't read all of his papers, but very interesting guy. I guess now let's talk about some robots that are doing really cool things. So I guess like stuff that's going on at like Boston Dynamics.
Oh yeah, the bee robots.
What do you mean the bee robots?
Well, they sound like bees.
Oh, that's right. They do. And they have you seen the one that did gymnastics? Was that Boston Dynamics?
Their robots are incredible. I like Big Dog is probably my favorite one. The one you like can't kick over.
Kind of seems like animal abuse though, doesn't it?
It does.
Like whenever they kick the dog on the ice,
guilty inside.
There's one where I don't think it's the dog one, but it is on 4 legs, and it kind of does look like a dog, but it has an extendable neck. Yeah. And it opens up the door, and while it's opening up the door, the researcher is pulling on his tail and trying to kick him over as the poor guy's trying to open up the door. It's just rude.
It is.
Yeah. But they have some incredible and when they made what was the name of the dog?
Big Dog.
It was a Big Dog.
Big Dog.
Big Dog came out like quite a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Right?
Yeah, they've made several like much cooler robots since then, but I still love Big Dog.
Yeah. They have a parkour robot that kind of jumps around. It can jump from one leg to the other leg, going up obstacles. Can do 2-legged jumps.
It's incredible.
It's actually incredible. And I don't know, like I did not think that technology in terms of robotics and reinforcement learning was at the point when Big Dog came out, which must have been like 10 years ago.
I think it was
even
longer. I think it was longer than that. Just like the dexterity that robot had when it came out was like mind blowing. You're used to seeing like, the C-3PO like robots where you can imagine just pushing that thing over and have his face planting, right? Like,
so I've seen C-3PO disassembled many times, but has anyone ever kicked C-3PO over, like in one of the movies?
I don't think so. I've never seen that.
He seems pretty stable.
I mean, aside from being ripped apart by Ugnaughts or whatever.
Yep. Even when he's walking in Tatooine in the sand, he never falls over. It's incredible.
Never falls over. A little stiff though.
Well, he has those braces in his arms that just makes him look like a robot, right?
Mm-hmm. And the sand gets everywhere.
I bet the sand does get everywhere, but as it does for humans too, right?
Indeed.
So now, do you know? Has anyone purchased Boston Dynamics? Like, do you know who they're owned by? Or are they still an independent research firm?
I think
someone
they're
must
still
have bought
independent.
them, yeah.
Maybe they've been purchased.
Yeah.
Not sure.
And so a lot of the general population looks at those kind of toy robots, like Big Dog looks at the one that's opening up doors.
Well, Big Dog was created as like a DARPA project for military use.
Okay, like, so it's for military use.
Unfortunately, it was like really loud.
I am sneaking behind you. So yeah, a lot of the general population looks at I guess a lot of things in robotics and artificial intelligence, like a lot of the stuff that Google DeepMind is working on, where they're working on interesting applications of artificial intelligence, but on very constrained projects. Like they're working on games specifically, like Go. They're working on
games with like a strict rule set.
Exactly. Yeah. Texas Hold'em poker, but very constrained betting patterns. A lot of stuff like that. Even like a StarCraft 2 bot,
Yeah.
like a AI bot.
Though that's much more complicated than
Much more complicated.
Go or
Go is pretty complicated. Go is pretty complicated. But a lot of people look at those toy problems and start thinking about, like, why are we doing this? Like, if you look at the deficit of Google DeepMind, it would blow your mind how much money they are blowing with seemingly no returns to society other than we have a bot that can beat the world leader of Go, and everyone goes, fantastic.
Yay!
It only costs you $600 million to do so. Thank you. Now what are you going to do? Google DeepMind has done some things that are worthwhile. I mean, for the Alphabet company, using reinforcement learning to do automatic server cooling, stuff like that. So basically, like, economizing their servers, platforms, and stuff like that. But apart from that, a lot of people look at robots that are made by Boston Dynamics. Like, how does that help society?
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think there's no immediate, like, present, this is helping us in this way, but it's helping us, develop that technology, and people try new things, and they'll find different ways where it can help us, just like, doing little things with that artificial intelligence and machine learning, like, just optimizing little decisions will probably go a long way.
Mm-hmm. And do you view, for example, a Boston Dynamics robot or like a dog that would be a companion? And I don't mean a companion as in like a lover or something like that. I mean a companion
Though
as
it
in
could
like it could be. I mean someone that would kind of be like at your side all the time, that you could command, give you a hand opening up cupboards, like say you had a disability or something like that. Like, do you think that that's going to be commonplace
It
in
could
like
be
25-year horizon?
in place of a service dog.
Yeah.
Perhaps for people with disabilities, it could carry things for you.
Mm-hmm.
It could guide you.
Yeah.
It could do all sorts of things. It could help you open cupboards, help you up the stairs,
Yeah.
warn you when someone's coming,
Mm-hmm.
And all without the downsides that come with a regular dog. There's lots of upsides to having a dog, but
True.
you
You don't have to clean up its
feed
poop.
them. You have to clean up after them.
You do have to do mild maintenance though, for a robot, right?
You do.
Need some oil,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But pretty minor. They don't bark and wake up your baby.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. I think that that's probably going to become commonplace. I don't know if in 25 years. The thing is that they're really expensive. Like, they would really need to drive down the price for it to be even feasible for a normal person.
Oh yeah, part of the expense, right, is like one, the processing power, which is getting cheaper all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And also like making really small motors that can do like put out high amounts of torque,
Mm-hmm.
as well as batteries. Batteries are this huge problem in mobile electronics, right? Like actually moving things takes a lot of juice.
Mm-hmm.
So the smaller, like higher capacity battery you can make, the better.
Well, I think aren't we collectively on Earth running out of a specific type of precious metal or natural resource that's used in traditional batteries? Is that true?
I would say
think I
used
read that
in
somewhere.
like microelectronics in general.
In microelectronics, okay. Can that be salvaged if you recycle like electronic boards properly?
It can be, but it's really difficult to separate all the metals. Because like, you have your integrated circuits, right? Like
Right.
that
Which
stuff,
are gold and a whole bunch of different
all
things.
sorts of different things when you get into your different logic gates and stuff like that, right? So it can be really hard to separate those things because they're literally like almost like painted on. They're so small.
That's right. So talking about having a companion. So, for example, like a big dog that replaces a dog. What are your thoughts on robots replacing workers? So let's talk about kind of menial tasks like a warehouse person that just categorizes objects, puts them in certain places, retrieves them, ships them, stuff like that.
So we're talking about robots doing physical tasks, or just some essentially like an automated script that it is a robot that can do.
I'm saying
electronic tasks.
My question is physical.
Physical.
So
okay.
like a warehouse robot,
A
something
warehouse
like
robot,
that.
sure.
Which is a physical task, but it also requires a lot of mental. Like you need to be able to do foreground, background detection. You need to have proprioception. Like you need to know where your limbs are. So then you need computer vision. Like there's actually a lot of things that go into.
You need to not run into other things. You need to be able to navigate around the warehouse.
Be able to recharge yourself. That sort of stuff. So it's actually a really complicated task.
Oh, definitely.
For something that us as humans, we're like...
You just take for granted.
Yeah.
You eat breakfast in the morning, you go to work, you do the things.
Yeah.
You just kind of almost implicitly know how to do everything.
Yeah.
For the most part.
I was going to say you just described life, but then you said you implicitly know how to do everything. And I'm like, that's not life.
When I say everything, I mean I put my arm in front of me and I see my arm and I see that there is or isn't something in my hand.
Yeah.
And
hypothetically, you'd be able to feel it.
You just do that exactly. You just do that automatic. I know that robots have a sense of touch, but
yeah, I don't. Well, there are force sensors. I think they're called like FSRs or something like that. Where it can not provide like tactile feedback for the robot, but can figure out if it's there's pressure exerted on certain parts of it. Yeah. Hey, why don't we take a quick break, and then we'll get back to robots working in factories. Humble Bundle is a video game subscription service that selects a bunch of fun games each month, and you choose which games you want to keep forever. With a subscription, you also get a 20% discount off of thousands of games on the Humble store. I often find myself browsing Steam, not knowing what I want to play, when that time could be better spent trying a handful of good hand-picked games. Sign up for a Humble Choice Basic or Premium subscription using the link bit.ly/humblenerd. Your subscription not only gets you a handful of great video games, but also supports this podcast. Now back to the show.
What question are you asking about these warehouse robots?
No, my question is, what are your thoughts on them replacing humans? What does that look like, I guess, for society, and what does that look like for companies?
I think my thoughts are kind of two-sided, right? So everyone kind of knows that in certain warehouses, employees are maybe not treated so well, and they're always every day being asked to do more and more without better compensation or bathroom breaks. And
is that common in factory work? Like you have scheduled bathroom breaks or are disallowed like a basic human right of evacuating yourself?
I hope not. I'm not I can't speak for lots of places, but you hear about these horror stories about this happening, right? So whereas with robots, they don't need to go to the bathroom. They can only work as fast as they can work, and they're not going to lollygag, right? Like they, at least at this point in time, they're not self-aware. They do the tasks they're supposed to do at the speed they can do it at. So that could be a plus. On the downside, you're displacing workers, so those people that had those jobs now don't have jobs. So you're impacting them, and because there's no universal basic income, what do those people do? Are they now homeless? What jobs do they get to do? So there's a downside there on top of the upside. For companies, I think it's a big win. You can work them 24 hours a day and probably have less robots than you would people because you're working 24 hours if you weren't already running 3 shifts, right? So big benefit there. For society as a whole, I think you would need to work out something like universal basic income beforehand, or you're looking for trouble.
Yeah. Well, I guess you would have a lot of displaced workers, right?
You would, and what are they going to do? Are they going to, crime rates are going to go up probably if they can't find work. Homelessness will go up. And in lots of countries around the world, it's not safe to be outside in all seasons. Like, they'll either freeze to death or cook to death, right? Like, so you can run into lots of problems there.
At the same time, if you employ a network of robots to perform, tasks in your company, right? You need people to service the robots, right?
What if you had robots to service the robots?
Who services the robots that service the robots?
The robots that service robots.
Who services the robots that service the robots?
Well, all you need is 2 robots that service robots, and they can service each other.
Don't say service each other. Robots servicing each other.
Sorry, they can repair and maintain each other.
Yes. So what you've described is a giant pyramid scheme of robots.
It's not a pyramid scheme. There doesn't have to be multiple levels. There's the robots that do the task.
Yep. And that's the bottom of the pyramid.
Sure. And then there's the robots that fix the robots that do the tasks. But those robots also fix them.
Each other.
So there's 2 levels.
There's 2 levels.
There's the task robots and the repairman robots.
I've never thought about the repairman robots repairing the repairman robots. That's genius.
I don't think so.
What are you saying, Anthony? That's really interesting to think about. Okay, so we'd have like lots of displaced workers, right? I was thinking that we need repair people to repair the robots.
But who designs the robots?
Yeah, but I think that can be, a small firm, right?
Could be.
That's designing all these robots. Like, I think the basic tech and the brain eventually will become general purpose enough where it can be slotted in many different machines.
Sure.
Right now, all of AI and machine learning is very single purpose.
Very task specific.
Very task
Can only do
specific.
one thing. A la hot dog, no hot dog.
A hot dog, no hot dog. You want to explain that reference for people in case they don't know what we're talking about?
I'll just say, if you haven't, go watch Silicon Valley.
Yeah, that's good enough. What's his name? Jin Yang?
Jing Yang.
Jing Yang. That's right. So with universal basic income, I've had I know what it is. It's in the name, universal basic income, right? Where does the money come from? So, would it be generated by businesses? Would it be generated by the population, who then pays a government who distributes universal basic income? Like, how do the actual economics of universal basic income actually work? That's always dumbfounded me.
It dumbfounds me as well. I think that's part of the problem of actually implementing it and making it happen.
Like, it's a cool idea, but how the heck do we do it?
Yeah, it's like a very Star Trek idea, right? Mm-hmm. But there's lots of hurdles in the way of making it happen, especially.
But we need the robots first. We need people to do the tasks so that we can be free to play golf.
It's a bit of a chicken and egg problem.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's something that warrants we can't start thinking about that once we already have the robots in place.
That's too late then.
Because it's too late, and we're going to have too many displaced people.
You need to have a plan in place and kind of implement them at the same time. And I think the difficulty there isn't just one body saying hey, we're developing these robots to make everyone's life better, and alongside that we need universal basic income. It's kind of like everyone everywhere is working on robots to help them their specific problem, and that I think eventually will morph into these robots that are able to help with a much broader set of problems. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of leaves I guess the governments and philanthropists of the world to figure out the solution to the universal basic income problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just I've thought about it a couple times, and I just don't see how the money is generated. Where does it actually come from?
You know what? It could come from taxing the robots.
Yeah. Okay. So this would be the corporations fronting the money for UBI.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. So then it comes the question of can we tax non-human beings?
I don't see why not.
So to tax something, they need to be making an income.
Correct.
Okay. So
Well, you could tax the corporation based on the number of robots they
oh yeah, that's
employ.
interesting. Instead of giving a salary to a robot, and then it becomes a question of if a robot has too much disposable income, what kind of shenanigans are the robots going to get into?
Exactly. So then the robots don't have any... Obviously, if you get to the point where the robots are actually artificially intelligent and self-aware, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
This, like the corporation taxing thing, is mostly if the robots are, automatons, basically.
Right. Yeah. So like a warehouse robot that does a very
Warehouse
specific
robot,
task.
no brain. He just does, exactly what he's programmed to do. He doesn't make any decisions outside of, I was told to put this here. Oh, it's full. I'll put it in the next best spot.
Mm-hmm. So I just thought about this. So to an extent, we already have this issue in society today.
Yeah.
So for example, look at McDonald's. They have one person working the till, and they have 4 to 6 robotic people robots, like touchscreens that take your order and place it, and then the people in the back, make your food and give it to you. Those machines are replacing what used to be workers.
Exactly. Yeah, it was actually at a McDonald's not that long ago where they had no one working the till.
Nobody.
They were just relying on those machines, and then the people in the back were doing whatever people at McDonald's do. I don't even know.
Whatever people...
I've never worked in fast food. I don't know what you even do in the back there. All I know is that my burger comes out, and I eat it.
It's like that Will Ferrell movie where he's like, Mom! I never know what she's doing back there.
Get me a sandwich!
Get me a sandwich! Mom, the meatloaf! What? Well, they obviously make food back there. You can't really see back there. So that's really interesting. So setting up a tax for corporations for to offset them displacing humans that would have been doing the job otherwise.
Exactly.
To front money for a UBI that's then distributed, probably taxed to the government, and then the government distributes the UBI.
Yeah, which has its own set of problems.
What are the problems? It sounds perfect to me.
Governments.
Period.
Historically inefficient.
Yeah.
And bureaucratic. So the people that need, that basic income may not be correctly identified in getting it. People play all sorts of games to try to increase their personal benefit from taxes and grants and all, welfare, right? Like, essentially, like, look at the state of welfare in a lot of countries. There's a lot of people that take advantage of it, and a lot of people that need it that can't get everything they need.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, that's kind of a detriment to like a mixed economical system where you have some sort of financial compensation from governments. A lot of people do abuse stuff that's not entirely intended for how they're using it, like employment insurance. A lot of people, milk that because it's free money from the government, and I'll put that in quotes. So that'll be interesting. Like, what are the ramifications, the social ramifications of implementing UBI? But I think that's a really good idea. Throwing the tax on corporations. I myself, as a business owner, don't like that idea, having another tax, because I run a machine learning company, and we employ robots all day to do training and stuff like that.
But we were talking about physical robots.
Yes. Well, yeah. So robots that are performing physical tasks.
Yes.
There's also a whole another set of bots, they're called, that are just on the internet.
Yeah, the big industry term right now that I've heard a lot is robotic process automation. is the term they're calling for essentially scripts that do things that people do right now.
Oh, okay. That would be doing non-physical labor, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
if you've essentially if you know the web service Zapier, I think that's
Yep.
how you say it.
Yep.
Essentially, different consulting companies, Deloitte, Gartner will, management consulting companies will help, corporations set up stuff like similar to that for their own internal use.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you could technically consider those robots to an extent, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that you totally can, and software bots, I would say that they don't have a physical manifestation.
No.
Like they're like the spirit of a bot.
They really are. And one robot could handle the same workload as hundreds of people in some cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and have slightly more brain cells, probably.
I don't know if you've ever interacted with a chatbot, but I'm not sure about that.
That's true. Chatbots are still notoriously bad.
Or what are they calling them now? Virtual assistants.
Virtual assistants. That's right. Wasn't Facebook working on a bot that would actually do like a Mechanical Turk thing in the background? Like you would write in a question or say, "Hey, order me some flowers and send it here." They would send it to. It was like a Facebook assistant or something like that, and they would actually have a human interpreting that and making it seem like it was a robot and just responding to outrageous things. And I don't know what they did with that project or what the purpose of that project was.
It kind of sounds like a project to fool everyone into thinking they're way farther ahead than they are.
Yeah. Or they were using it for training data.
They could be, yeah.
To be like, well, here's how a human would respond.
Exactly. Well, you could use it for that.
Yeah. So I wonder if that's like, I don't know what their end game was for that, but certainly an interesting use of, I guess, fake bottage.
Fake bottage.
Fake bottage.
What about some of those crazy Twitter bots?
Yeah, those are really interesting. Like they actually make, so they use, I think they use recurrent neural networks, and they produce character by character new tweets and just pump them out into Twitter land.
Yeah, there was that one a couple years ago that just started like blasting out some Nazi stuff.
Oh yeah,
because it had just so many of those people had been tweeting at it and just feeding it this propaganda essentially, and training it that like that's how people respond to everything all the time.
I believe that was 4chan.
Sounds like something they would do.
Yeah. So that's very much a danger of letting
machine
nefarious
machine learning in general.
Yeah. If you give it an unrepresentative data source, it will learn that, and it will perhaps not be what you're looking for. I think that's definitely something to look out for in the future in terms of red flags.
Yep.
And also something, I don't know. Like there's a lot of issues in just kind of letting free learning bots loose into society and just hoping that they learn the right thing. I guess that's kind of like humans, isn't it?
Kind of. I have to ask you a question. Do you thank Alexa when you ask her for stuff?
No, I mostly swear at her.
You mostly swear at her? See, my wife swears by thanking and being polite to Alexa because she does not want to be the first one to go in the robot uprising.
That's actually hilarious. And that opens up a whole nother Pandora's box about Alexa and having Google Home assistants and stuff like that, letting those surveillance devices into our homes.
Just listening to you.
Just listening
all the time.
to you. And the counter argument is, we're not doing anything funky. Like, who cares? But they're listening to everything that we're saying. So it's a very interesting topic, and we'll probably explore that. I think we're going to do an episode on like data privacy.
I think we definitely should.
We definitely should, because I think that warrants a whole nother conversation. But in terms of robots, is there anything that you want to add, or anything else on your list?
You know what? I don't think so. Maybe the last thing on my list is like making a robot now is getting easier and easier. I don't know if you've heard about ROS or Robot OS.
No, not at all.
So it's not an actual OS. It runs on top of Linux, but it has like all these different modules and plugins you can add to like just make your robot. We run it on a Raspberry Pi with an Arduino, and you can like essentially hook it up to some motors or sensors or whatever and build your own robot at home.
That's really cool. Do you know So it's purely software, and you would need
it's
to.
software, yeah,
Okay.
and open source.
Okay, so it's not like a kit that you can go buy somewhere that would have like some motors. And,
You know what?
and stuff like
I'm
that.
sure there are kits that you can buy that have everything you need to make a certain robot. That stuff is all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, maybe we'll put a post to was it ROS OS?
ROS, yeah.
Yeah, we'll put a link to that on our website. It's knickknacknerd.com. You can reach us at hello@knickknacknerd.com. I'm Greg Burlett.
I'm Anthony Keeling.
You can reach us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and all those other social media platforms. You can also support us at patreon.com/knickknacknerd. You can donate as little as $1 a day to help us out with, all the overhead that comes with putting on a wonderful podcast for you people. That's it. Have a good time.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, guys, that was our buddies over at Nick Nack Nerd. Again, that's NickNackNerd. You can find them at knickknacknerd.com or on all social media. Just search for Nick Nack Nerd. Again, NickNackNerd.com. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys next week for another episode of Jumbled, your favorite podcast about uplifting other podcasts.